Welcome to this explainer. I am so incredibly pumped you're joining us today because we're about to unpack something absolutely fascinating. Every decade has this one specific industry that quietly, almost invisibly, changes the entire world. And today, we're going to tease apart a massive, totally unseen industry that's literally building the foundation for our future. It's wild because the masses are all looking in one direction, but as you'll see, the real trillion-dollar opportunity is hiding completely out of plain sight.
Let's look back for a second at the major tech revolutions over the last few decades. There is a super clear pattern here. In the early 90s, boom, it was the internet. The 2000s, smartphones completely took over our lives. The 2010s brought us cloud computing, which totally revolutionized how businesses run. And now, here in the 2020s, practically everyone just assumes that AI is the defining industry. I mean, you see the headlines, right? Chatbots, billion-dollar AI startups everywhere. But what if all of that is really just the tip of the iceberg?
So what if AI is only the beginning? What if the absolute biggest investment opportunity of the next 20 years isn't actually artificial intelligence itself, but rather the industry that makes AI even possible? The true shift we're living through isn't just about the software. It's about the completely invisible world that powers it. See, behind all those flashy AI headlines is this massive hidden transformation. It's built on electricity, advanced chips, robotics, biotech, and manufacturing. And together, all these pieces are creating a really crucial economic reality. It's what experts call an enabling industry. Now, an enabling industry is basically an entirely new sector where its products become absolutely essential for dozens of other industries to even function at all. If we look at history, it shows us that these foundational industries often create way more wealth than the specific inventions they initially support. It's exactly like the gold rush. The biggest winners back then? They usually weren't the miners striking gold, they were the people selling the pickaxes and the jeans. Think about the railroads. They didn't just move trains around, they completely transformed agriculture, manufacturing, mining, and city building. Or electricity. It didn't just light up a few bulbs, it became the literal bedrock for every modern factory and household. Same with the internet. It didn't just give us web pages. It enabled e-commerce, cloud computing, the whole social media shebang. And today, we're seeing a completely parallel pattern emerging right before our eyes. All right, let's move on to section 1, the anatomy of a prompt. To really grasp how heavily software relies on cold, hard physical hardware, let's walk step by step through the incredible high-stakes relay race that kicks off the exact second you ask an AI assistant a seemingly simple question. Ready? First, your request shoots through fiber optic networks. Second, it hits this massive, sprawling data center that routes the information. Third, thousands of specialized processors fire up to perform billions of crazy complex calculations in an instant. Fourth, all those chips generate a ton of heat, so heavy-duty cooling systems have to work overtime just to extract it. And finally, none of this happens without power systems delivering completely uninterrupted electricity the entire time. Every single step of this digital miracle is deeply, physically tethered to hardware. And here is the absolutely crucial point. Remove any one of those components and the whole system crashes. It's like a giant house of cards. AI simply cannot exist without advanced semiconductors. Cloud computing goes dark without those massive data centers. And literally none of it works without reliable electricity. This intense fragility, this absolute total dependence, is exactly what's sparking a totally unprecedented wave of global investment right now.
Which brings us to section 2, the infrastructure pillars.
For decades, right, whenever we heard the word infrastructure, we immediately pictured government-funded roads, bridges, water pipes, the usual stuff. And sure, those are still essential. But today's economy demands a totally interconnected digital ecosystem, and it's built on 5 major pillars. First up, semiconductors. Modern chips are basically the new oil of the digital economy, and they require fabrication plants that cost tens of billions of dollars to build. Second is energy. AI is a total power hog. It consumes extraordinary amounts of electricity. This is literally driving up demand for transmission lines, massive battery storage, and it's even reviving interest in nuclear power just to guarantee dependable generation. Pillar 3 is robotics. Thanks to severe labor shortages, automation isn't just some neat cost-saving measure anymore. It's an economic necessity. We're taking machine vision and sensors straight out of automotive factories and dropping them right into our warehouses. Fourth, we have communications. Every AI model depends on moving data, which means we need massive expansions of fiber optic networks and satellite internet. And finally, industrial software. We're now dealing with things called digital twins, which are basically virtual replicas of physical systems, an AI that can predict maintenance before a machine even breaks down.
Software isn't just replacing paper anymore, it is managing entire industrial ecosystems. When you add all those pillars together, you're looking at hundreds of billions of dollars. That is a staggering scale of capital being deployed. We rarely see numbers like this in human history. Tech giants, utility companies, and massive construction firms are pouring unimaginable sums of money into expanding this AI foundation, simply because every new piece of technology requires exponentially more of it. Let's jump into Section 3, the economic reality and friction. Think about the fundamental difference here. Consumer tech, like your smartphone or your smartwatch, changes every few years, right? You're always upgrading. But infrastructure assets, those operate for decades. And that stability is exactly why private equity firms, sovereign wealth funds, and massive institutional investors are throwing capital at infrastructure. It offers incredibly long-term stability and virtually guaranteed future demand as our world continues to digitize. And hey, this goes way beyond just private investment. There is a massive, high-stakes geopolitical strategy at play here. Today, a nation's economic competitiveness strictly depends on owning the actual systems that enable innovation. Countries all over the map recognize how critical this is, which is exactly why governments are stepping in and heavily subsidizing their own domestic semiconductor manufacturing and renewable energy projects. The global race isn't just about producing finished products anymore. It is urgently about owning the underlying systems. Now, of course, an expansion of this sheer magnitude is going to hit some very real friction. These giant infrastructure projects require enormous amounts of capital. We're talking multi-year permitting processes just to break ground. Supply chains are still incredibly vulnerable to global tensions. Plus, there's this massive demand for highly skilled engineering talent that is just really hard to find right now. And on top of all that, regional energy constraints are becoming a serious bottleneck. But don't panic. History shows us these hurdles are completely normal. The railroads faced intense engineering nightmares. Electrifying the world required tearing up and rebuilding entire cities. The internet meant laying down totally unprecedented global communication networks. The friction we're seeing right now, it's really just the growing pains of a massive economic transformation. And that leads us to our final part, Section 4, the foundational fortune. When we pull all this together, a really clear truth emerges. When people think about tech revolutions, they almost always focus on the shiny products they can hold in their hands, the phone, the laptop, the AI chatbot on their screen. But the greatest fortunes are frequently built by the people who create the foundation underneath all that. The biggest historical fortunes were actually made by the companies supplying the electricity during the industrial age, the firms laying millions of miles of fiber optic cables during the dot-com boom, and the semiconductor makers who are currently powering our entire digital economy. I want to leave you with this really powerful thought. In every major technological revolution, the foundation often proves more valuable than the building itself. The next trillion-dollar industry might be totally hidden from the headlines, not because it's small, but simply because most people are looking in the wrong direction. The future isn't just being built by the companies coding artificial intelligence, it's being forged by the massive physical industries making AI possible in the first place. Kind of makes you reconsider where the true value of the next 20 years resides, doesn't it? Well, if you enjoyed this explainer, make sure to hit subscribe as we keep breaking down the unseen forces that are literally shaping our world. See you in the next one.